Hi, everybody. I'm Matt.
And I'm Steve.
And this is Marvel Reread Club. Hi, Steve. Welcome back.
Thank you.
You may have noticed that my sound was a little scratchy at the beginning of last episode and then got better when we actually started talking about the books. Steve was nice enough to give me a new microphone for Christmas, but I don't like it. So I did the opening. I did the first 5 minutes of last episode with it, and I thought it was too scratchy and I could hear my breathing too much. So I went ahead and switched back then, and I will indeed stay on this one for now. At some point, we may troubleshoot that mic and try to get it working, but that didn't work today. And today we are already an hour past when we intended to start recording, and we are just now starting the episode. So let's go ahead and jump in with the second half of the books from June 1967.
All right, I will. And I will say that I agreed with you that mic was not sounding right. I don't know what was wrong with it. I don't know if it's just a bum mic. I don't know. But one way or the other, yes, we need to figure something else out. Oh, and the other thing that I'll mention is we were just talking about that Kirby book that I had read last week by Mark Evanier. Prominently on the cover of the book, it says, Introduction by Neil Gaiman. So yeah. I'm guessing
you have no idea how many books have a big Neil Gaiman blurb right on the cover, or Introduction by Neil Gaiman, or everything. I mean, everything. And it's just a nightmare. How many TV shows have his name prominently on them that are currently airing on the air?
Or in production. I imagine season 2 of Sandman is like in the middle of production right now. And that's sad. I was always, I was a Neil Gaiman fan. I still like a lot of his writing, but yeah, it's just, ooh, boy.
No, I was just talking to Betsy last night about we were talking about one by one feeling bad. Tori Amos. We feel bad for Tori Amos. We feel bad for all of his prominent fans. I mean, Betsy knew Neil Gaiman. Betsy met Neil Gaiman a couple of times, but she knows a lot of people who Betsy is good friends with are good friends with Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
And indeed, Betsy and I were there when Neil and Amanda announced their engagement. We were at the party in New York where they announced it. And
wow.
And we were talking to his publicity agent at the time, and they announced their wedding. And I turned to his publicity agent and I said, and if the marriage doesn't work out, he's still got his ex-wife in the woodshed, which is true. He lived on a large property, and his ex-wife lived in a guest house out back of his large property when he was married to Amanda Palmer. So anyway, yes. And then his publicity agent cracked up when I said that, and then stopped herself from laughing and was like, oh, no, wait, this is a fire I have to put out. But anyway, so yes.
So
whole thing is just a damn shame. Anyway, we are even further past the time. So let's go ahead and jump in with Fantastic Four number 63.
Let's do it. Okay, so Blastar, the Living Bomb Burst. And we have a cover with, other than that title, no other explanatory text. And it is a really action-packed cover. It's sort of almost an ensemble-looking thing with everybody doing different stuff on there in the fight against Blastar and Sandman. So we begin our tale with a massive explosion erupting out from the floor in the Baxter building. We see that Triton is still there with them. Let's face it, Stan the Man Lee and Jack King Kirby have done it again. And so have Joe Sinnott Inker and Sam Rosen letterer. This explosion that came up out of the floor has gone all the way up through the ceiling. Mr. Fantastic stretches up there to see what's going on and gets blasted by, presumably, one of Blastar's blasts. So Triton flies up to go and see what's going on. Triton seems like a bad fit for this here.
Yeah, you're in over your head, Triton.
He should be in over his head. That's where he's in his element. But instead, he is up above his head. I don't know. Anyway, I've lost the thread. So anyway, he's still got his little air gun thing, and he uses it to shoot up through the hole. And apparently, he is really super strong and is beating the crap out of Blastar, which is surprising. But then Sandman goes ahead and neutralizes him with a bunch of sand. They combine their forces and knock him out. I've got to say, at the bottom of page 4, Sinnott makes a sandy texture on Sandman's face and head, which is quite interesting. It's not something we've really seen much in the past.
Yeah.
We see Sandman grabbing Blastar and trying to take him down to ground level. I don't know if Blastar really needs that, but Sandman is walking down the side of the building. Now I can see he says, oh yeah, the chemicals I've got allow me to do this, that, and the other, and now I can go ahead and descend the side of the building. But I always dislike it when somebody walking vertically is just walking as though they were walking horizontally. It's like
Right.
that takes a heck of a lot of core strength. Anyway, for whatever reason, Johnny and Crystal had left the Baxter building before all of this started going down. So they're on the street and they're like, oh, wait a minute, something's going on. We might have to do something about that.
Yeah, this is the classic Marvel inconsequential confrontation, which I've complained about in the past. Like, Blastar and Sandman are on the roof going like, we want to kill these people who are down below. We are going to start shooting blasts at them. And then Triton comes up and punches them, and then they deal with Triton rather handily. And then they're like, okay, let's take a walk around the city. And it's like, well, wait, you were just involved in this whole thing. You were trying to kill the Fantastic Four. Don't you remember? Why are you taking a walk around the city now? Like, the Fantastic Four aren't dead. You did not succeed in your original plan. I just find it somewhat bizarre. And then the fight resumes very quickly. The Fantastic Four run out and grab them on the street. So I don't know why they felt the need to take a little break from the fight here just for a couple of pages.
Yeah, neither do I. So anyway, we see a little bit more. We talked last episode about the militarization of the New York City police in the Marvel Universe, starting a couple of decades, 2 or 3 decades before it really began in earnest here in our universe. And as I said, it's a little more justified in their universe.
Yeah.
So they apparently have a cement cannon that they're able to use against Sandman, and it looks like it's actually going to work. But then Blastar goes ahead and cracks it open by can I say that he's finger blasting it, or is that not something I should say?
I would say finger banging would be more of a problem, but finger blasting is within the realm of taste and respectability.
Okay, good. So anyway, Johnny enters the fight. We have an interesting big splash page with Blastar just basically venting his rage verbally. And overall, I really like the splash page, but one place that I really think that Sinnott I would have made a different choice than Sinnott, which is not something that I will say very often. On page 8, this big splash page, Blastar's crotch is the concavity is one thing, but you pretty much are accepting that in comic book art. But the lack of shadow, how the shadow just ends right where it hits his shorts there, really sort of emphasizes the concavity of what we have there.
Yeah,
which kind of jumped out at me a little bit. Anyway, we have Thing goes ahead and starts manhandling the two of them, but Sandman actually dumps himself out of his metal outfit, so the Thing is still just hanging on to the metal outfit. So I guess the metal outfit can't turn to sand? That seems a little inconsistent with what we usually see. Usually whatever garments he's wearing will turn to sand as well.
Yeah, I think it can.
Anyway, he slithers down a storm drain. The Thing just gets into some fisticuffs with Blastar. Of course, Blastar makes the really horrible decision that villains always seem to do. Says, I will not even use my own matchless explosive power. I want to crush you with my bare hands. I'll show you that the strength of Blastar is far greater than yours. So, yeah, I'm not going to use my best weapon here. Good thing for Thing. That really works out for him. Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Girl had stayed behind to try to help Triton after he got sand blasted. And so they've got him in a little water tank. And suddenly Mr. Fantastic is like, oh my God, I've got this thing that can solve this whole problem. And he goes and starts digging through a junk drawer, basically. Or it's a closet. It's like Fibber McGee's closet or something like that.
I know I've got 9-volt batteries here at some place. I remember I bought a 2-pack of 9-volt batteries and I only used one of them and the other one must be here in the junk drawer.
Yes. Yeah, but I don't, my mother-in-law sometimes references Fibber McGee's closet. I don't know. I would not know what it is unless I had looked it up after her references. Do you know what that is?
No, I have no idea what you're talking about. I know there was a show called Fibber, McGee, and Molly.
Yes. It was originally a radio show that then later became a TV show. And a running joke was that Fibber McGee was like, oh, no, I've got that in the closet. Let me go over here, and opens the closet. And then inevitably there's a huge clash and clatter as everything comes falling out of this junk closet. So, yes. Anyway, that is
Okay.
he's looking through Fibber McGee's closet there for whatever he's doing. The Sandman ends up rolling the thing up in his sand, and he looks like a little pig in a blanket.
Yeah.
And then Sandman just ends up rolling down the street. It reminds me a little bit of the Hostess Fruit Pies ad, where the Hulk rolls up the Disco Devils or whatever they're called. Although in there they clearly would have died. Here, the thing is just fine. So Blastar then tries to accost Crystal, who has made it up here as well, and she comes up with this like storm wind that blows him away, and everyone's like, whoa, what was that? Have we seen what Crystal's powers are before now?
It is always, when I read 1960s Fantastic Four comics, I've always like, what are Crystal's powers again? Why can't you be consistent with this? Why, what she later joins the Fantastic Four. She replaces Sue in the Fantastic Four. And even when Crystal is one of the main members of the Fantastic Four, I feel like her powers are always very inconsistent and very unclear. She has elemental powers, whatever those are. I feel like it's just fine when she uses wind. I feel like having her essentially have wind powers is fine. But sometimes she has flame powers. Sometimes she never really has rock powers. It's all very unclear.
Yeah, my understanding is it's supposed to be wind, water, fire, and earth. Anyway, we're seeing a little bit more of what she can do here. Johnny ends up in a thing where he's trying to overheat Blastar. Blastar apparently can just absorb this stuff and then send it back at Johnny. And Johnny's like, okay, I gotta go and figure out something else. Sandman dumps Thing in the water and is standing there and thinks that the Thing has drowned. Apparently, when Sandman dumped out of his metal outfit, he still was able to keep his mask, his wristbands, and his shorty shorts. So that's a little weird. Why did they turn to sand and the other part didn't? Who knows? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But the Thing is able to hold his breath longer than Sandman thinks. He comes back up, is able to smash Sandman, who then disperses into the water. And we know he's going to come back at some point, but we're not going to have to deal with him for a while.
He says, I figure it'll probably take months for the Sandman to bring himself back together. So it's like, we have given up on imprisoning Sandman. We have given up on doing anything permanent to Sandman. But as long as we can just turn him into soup for a couple months, that is the biggest victory you can get against the Sandman. I should say, going to the docks was Sandman's idea. He was the one who said, let's take this battle to the docks. And it's like, Sandman, if you are someone who disperses in water, then don't take your battles to the docks.
Yes. So Mr. Fantastic, meanwhile, has found whatever gizmo that he had in Fibber McGee's closet and is trying to get it on Blastar's head while Blastar is trying to blow him up. Sue, very usefully and heroically, goes and gets close to Blastar to draw his fire and uses her invisible force field to protect herself, which startles Blastar. He doesn't understand why things aren't working. Mr. Fantastic has first one failed attempt and then finally a successful attempt to get this helmet on Blastar's head that somehow diffuses his explosive power. It's, a little bit like by cutting off the pressure buildup in your body, you become as vulnerable as any man. Okay, fine. And then at that point, Mr. Fantastic is just with his regular human strength able to just knock Blastar down with a left hook. So they're like, Reed's like, wow, I would really like to study the now unconscious Blastar to figure out what the heck's going on. But even I'm smart enough to know that we need to get him back to the negative zone immediately.
Yes.
I'm not going to pull that right now. So then in the end, he says, Ben, we've got to take Blastar back to the subspace lab. And Ben says, rats. Every time you say we that way, it ends up meaning me. Yeah, a fun all-action issue. Let me see. I had a couple of notes that I skipped by here. Let me just see. Yeah, so both here on the last page and a little bit earlier in the story, there is once again Stan Lee trying to bridge the whole idea of subspace and negative zone. There's a panel where he says, yes, I'm convinced he entered our world from the negative zone of subspace. And then here at the end, he once again talks about the subspace lab. So he's sort of, making a gradual transition there. Anything else? No, I think that's it that I had to say for this issue. What say you?
Yeah, I should say that I think on Facebook or something, someone was showing a Kirby Coletta Fantastic Four page from the brief period when Coletta was inking Kirby on this book. And it was so awful. And I'm like, I'd forgotten how wonderful Sinnott is. And I am just, I came to this book with a renewed appreciation of how wonderful Sinnott is. Sinnott in this book is like velvet. He has just got such a smooth touch. He is like, a guy in the 70s with a furry glove, who giving a woman a massage. It is just, this was a thing in the 70s, the fur glove that you were supposed to give somebody a massage wearing a fur glove. I think it shows up in a Bond movie too.
Okay.
Anyway. All right, I won't bring it up. Never mind. That's taken out.
No. It's staying in, man. That needs to stay in.
Obviously, one of the worst things Quetta does is eyes. I love Sinnott's eyes. Sinews and muscles is one of the worst things Quetta does. I love Sinnott's sinews and muscles. It's just wonderful. Anyway, love this issue. I'm not sure you mentioned, I do like at one point, Ben is trying to figure out how to defeat Blastar. And he's like, well, you shoot these blasts out of your fingertips. I'm going to point your fingers at your face. And then you can't use your powers. And Blastar is actually like taken aback for a minute, like, I better not blast myself in the face. I don't know what to do. So I did like that quite a bit. I do like how the police are finally getting their act together. And they're like, the police have specific bazookas for every villain who has attacked New York several times. They're like, all right, guys, here's what we got to do. We are the villains that attack New York over and over again. We got to design a bazooka for each one and have a special bazooka squad for everybody who attacks New York. And I really love that they're doing that.
I'm assuming they must be contracting these jobs out either to Reed Richards or to Tony Stark to design these weapons.
I do think like the story ends rather anticlimactically. Like, we just got totally spoiled by the stories from 44 to 60 in terms of just the epic cosmic nature and the really meaningful endings to stories like This Man, This Monster, or, several of the stories. And there is no heartbreaking or tragic element to the end of this story, this 3-issue story. It just sort of wraps up. But that's fine.
One thing that I will say is, once again, having just read this book about Kirby, and about how essentially Ben Grimm and Nick Fury are sort of Kirby's two avatars, more or less, in the Marvel Universe. So essentially, if we think of Kirby saying rats every time you say we that way, it ends up meaning me. Right. It sort of adds a little bit more there.
Good point. Okay, let's go ahead and jump over to Strange Tales number 157, featuring Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Doctor Strange. We have an absolutely gorgeous Steranko cover. We're used to them at this point, but they're still going. Steranko using quite a lot of Kirby Crackle here. So Kirby Crackle has begun to go out of Kirby onto other things. We have Baron Strucker as Supreme Hydra wearing his Satan Claw, looming over Nick Fury and Laura Brown, while there is a globe of the Earth with the Hydra logo stamped on it and spreading arms covering the Earth, and it says Crisis in big letters. It is a gorgeous cover. So then let's go ahead and jump into the issue and jump into, indeed, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., Supreme Headquarters, International Espionage Law Enforcement Division, edited by Stan Lee, the Overlord, written and illustrated by Jim Steranko, the Overseer, lettered by Sam Rosen, the Overworked. So some problematic words in there, but we'll just go ahead and skip over that. And so then Baron Strucker thinks that he is frying Nick Fury, still has all of these Hydra goons watching it. They're still in Hydra Island, which still looks gorgeous.
On page 2, where we see all those Hydra goons in their little compartments, it looks very much like somebody's action figure display wall with the little itty bitty cubbies for each action figure. Anyway, go on.
But then Strucker turns off the machine and Fury is gone. He has escaped and he's trying to figure that out. Back on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, Sitwell is trying to figure out what's going on. He uses the espers, who we haven't seen in a while.
Sitwell's doing the twist there. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, he does.
Page 3, panel 3.
Yeah.
All right, go on.
So cut back to Nick Fury. It would seem to make more sense for him to clobber one of the Hydra goons and steal his weapon, given that Fury was presumably, when he was strapped down to that table, did not have any weapons on him. But no, he reveals that he says, as not far away, the shield stalwart rapidly assembles a weapon from his auxiliary belt. This little fireball shooter should take the pressure off me if things start getting hot. So somehow Nick Fury had gotten in that very tight situation with a weapon still on him, goes ahead and puts it together. We then get you. In the last episode, we're complaining about where is the perspective points on a Daredevil drawing. Here we have a absolutely gorgeous splash page on page 5. Nick Fury is jumping across the page in a very unclear way, and he is firing fireballs from his gun, the gun that, again, it was sort of hidden inside his belt, so it's a very badass gun, while several Hydra agents, both piled up underneath him and above him on a sort of MC Escher stairway, are toppling. It is a gorgeous splash page.
Yes.
But once again, where on earth are the perspective points on this drawing? What is up? What is down? What is left? What is right? This is
where is the ground? Where, yes.
What is Nick Fury standing on?
But in this case, it's crazy enough that you don't notice or care. That was the problem with the colon one last episode, was that it was supposed to be buildings, and you did see lines converging, and they were clearly overlapping each other in wrong ways. Here, it's like, who the hell knows what this is supposed to be, but who cares?
Just gorgeous, gorgeous splash page on page 5. Fury continues to fight his way out. There is, at one point, you're talking about things they do that don't make sense. You were talking about in Fantastic Four of like, I'll fight you without using my powers. Well, here we have, we have an idea. There's 9 Hydra goons here and we're attacking him. It's Fury. We found him. Use plan K11. Attack him one at a time and exhaust him for the kill. And so this is another bad thing that villains do that they shouldn't do, attacking the hero one at a time instead of all at once. And so we got this is Stranko's excuse for a 9-panel grid as Kirby KOs them one by one, which is gorgeous. But then
Fury, not Kirby.
Did I say Fury? I do that all the time.
You did say Kirby, although, once again, Nick Fury is one of Kirby's 2 avatars within the Marvel Universe. So, I'll allow it.
Yes, even though Kirby is no longer strong as Fury on either of Fury's 2 monthly books. But so then they have a new weapon. I mean, I cannot describe to you how insane Stranko's imagination is. Stranko is just like, I am just killing it on page after page after page. Well, then we get to another splash page. Just when you thought that this issue couldn't get any crazier or more beautiful, we get to page 8, where it turns out Fury has another weapon. He's got something called the Shield Hallucination Cube, so Kirby has been experimenting. I did mean to say Kirby that time. Kirby has been experimenting with photo collages over in Fantastic Four. Well, now we have Steranko's first photo collage, and it is gorgeous. Kirby tosses this. Sorry, now that time I didn't mean to. Fury tosses this hallucination cube, and there's this sort of smoke arising from it that fills the whole page. And inside the smoke, you can see various like Grey's Anatomy type drawings turning every which way, overlapping each other in this bizarre, very 60s. Like, this comic could only have come out in 1967. This comic could only have come out in June of 1967. Like, that is how precisely we are pinpointing this comic in the psychedelic revolution. And it was really just Stranko leading the psychedelic revolution in comics. Well, that's not true. Marie Severin was doing it over in the other half of this very book. So we had 2 very different versions of the psychedelic revolution. Yes. One in the first half of the book, the sci-fi psychedelic revolution in S.H.I.E.L.D., and the mystic psychedelic revolution over in Doctor Strange in the back half of the book. And it is just gorgeous.
So I have a couple of things to say. One, I don't think this is a photo collage. I think that this is all Steranko working with ink wash and black ink and white ink and just creating this thing that he then pastes up on the page. I don't think this is photo collage. I think this is 100% every line, every shade there. It comes from Steranko's hand. That's how I read this.
Maybe.
The second thing is that this isn't being reproduced using a halftone screen, as far as I can tell. And I don't know, based on the technology they had at the time, how they're reproducing this. This is mind-blowing how they're, what they're doing here. Now, granted, I am looking at the Marvel Unlimited version online, so it could be that maybe there was a halftone screen and they shot it from something else, but it is just mind-blowing to me. And also, at this point, where was the discussion in the culture about using LSD as a weapon against a population to make everyone think that they were losing their minds? I'm assuming that was around now, because that's basically what Fury is doing here, is going ahead and dosing the entire island with LSD, as far as we can tell.
Yeah. I mean, I think the MK Ultra program of the CIA was already done with at this point, but I don't remember. But yes, this is has shades of MK Ultra to it. So then Baron Strucker finally finds Fury, has his Satan claw, his big red, powerful Kirby Crackle claw, and they get in a huge fight. They fight for several pages. It looks like Strucker is winning, and that is the end of the issue. This is an insane issue. I've spent a long time describing it because there's just so much wonderful stuff here. One thing, a couple of things I forgot to mention. Time for the air horn, Steve.
Oh, yes, I know. I didn't know if you'd caught it or not, but yes, we will go ahead and splice that in right here.
Yes. So this is the first mention of Soupy Sales we have had in several issues.
Fury is body throwing a Hydra agent, and the Hydra agent is saying, "Hey, what the?" And Fury says, "Real snappy dialogue you got there, pal. Who writes your materials? Soupy Sales." So, yes.
So for those who don't remember, or heaven forbid are listening to these episodes in backward order, there was a period of about 10 months where Marvel was mentioning Soupy Sales in multiple books every month for some crazy reason. And it wasn't just Stan, it was Stan and Roy. And so now this is the first time in about 5 months that we have had a reference to Soupy Sales. And it is like old times.
Indeed it is. The only things that I have left to say are when Strucker approaches Fury for the final fisticuffs. Well, first of all, Strucker says, "It would have been a pity had they slain you, Fury. That is a privilege I claim for myself." And meanwhile, he's behind Kirby. See, I did it too. He's behind Fury and has a gun. He could just as easily have just walked up to Fury and just popped him in the back of the head. But no, he's like, no, I must defeat you by hand-to-hand combat. But I do like also Fury's dialogue there. It says, "So you finally decided to come out of your rat's nest and meet me eye-patched a monocle." Is a fantastic line. There was another part in the Fury Strucker fist fight where Fury says, "I'm really interested in seeing what happens when I knock the Hydra's head off." And it's like, well, if the Hydra in the Marvel Universe were anything like the Hydra of actual Greek myth, you would know. Two would grow back in its place rather than the two tentacles growing back or whatever, as they say in Marvel. Anyway, that was all I had to say. Yes, a fantastic... Oh, actually, no. One other thing, you said that these are the two ones leading the psychedelic revolution. There was also an inadvertent and reluctant leader of the psychedelic revolution at Marvel that was Steve Ditko. He was horrified when he found out that his stuff was being drooled over by kids doing psychedelics. So he started it even though he didn't mean to or want to.
Yes. Well, I don't know. Marie Severin was probably in her 40s at this point, so I don't know I don't know how she felt about her work being in head shops. I don't know how she felt about her work being on the cover of a Pink Floyd album. But we'll find out. She was probably pretty proud of that, I'd imagine, even though she may not have been grooving to their music, especially that early Syd Barrett music. But we'll talk more about that soon when we talk about the issue where they pulled her art from. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the back half of this book. Speaking of Marie Severin, Doctor Strange, Master of the Mystic Arts, the end of the Ancient One. It is not this issue that art was pulled from. It is the next. So let's talk about this one now. The End of the Ancient One, produced by the Masters of Mythopia, Spellbinding Stanley and Magical Marie Severin. Inking Herb Trimpe, lettering Artie Simek. By their amulets, ye shall know them. So Herb Trimpe is going to be a major Marvel artist from this point on. He just makes a brief appearance here, inking Marie Severin, I think later he will become the Hulk penciler and Marie will be inking him. So they're trading back and forth. I don't think of Trempy as an inker. This is rare inking from Trempy. Trempy also, even when he was the penciler on Hulk for about 10 years, he did not ink himself, had many different inkers who inked him in many different ways. When the issue begins, we have Doctor Strange and the Ancient One fighting Zom, who is still a striking look as he was last issue. He's got his flaming manacles and he's got his Neckless Chewbacca type body and his tunic and his forelock, which will turn out to be a major story point.
When you say necklace, you mean lacking a neck. Because when you say his necklace body, I'm like, what, his body's like a necklace? What do you... Okay, his body lacking a neck, yes.
Neckless. So then they are at Stonehenge. They are fighting. That's sort of a fun place to have a fight. And then, bizarrely, the Ancient One gets absorbed into the stone of Stonehenge. Zom says, now into the heart of the stone with you. Let your physical essence be fused forever. And they're sort of acting like it is forever. They're sort of acting like the Ancient One's dead now. But he says, just as he disappears, before I am lost forever, I have only strength enough to say the forelock. And I wish it had been a bit more mysterious what he was saying here. It's a bit obvious what he's saying, like just grab that piece of hair on his head. But first, Zom is using...
He's using the 7 something, and there are these lines, these parallel, like swirling and, backtracking lines that are swirling around this entire thing. And he refers to them as the 7 bands of Cyttorak. There we are. Yeah. Zom seeks to ensnare us in these 7 bands of Cyttorak. And so, once again, more Cyttorak, as we've been having in X-Men. But this is where we're used to seeing it. We just haven't seen these bands this way. We saw them, I believe, what I would consider the bands of Cyttorak in X-Men when they unfurled from those cinnamon bun-looking things. Those seemed to then act as bands. But one way or the other, it's really interesting how Marie Severin interprets the idea of the 7 bands of Cyttorak here visually.
So absolutely gorgeous art on the bottom of page 3, where Zom's casts a spell of distortion, which causes all sorts of body distortions in Doctor Strange. I should say that up until this book, Marie Severin was just doing Doctor Strange, and she was penciling and inking it. This month, she's penciling both Hulk and Doctor Strange, and so she is not inking either. But Herb Trimpe is doing a really nice job inking her. It really feels exactly the same as when she was inking herself. And gorgeous picture of Doctor Strange looking all distorted. Then he finally gets himself back together. They are fighting. They are destroying Stonehenge, by the way. So I guess Marvel Universe from this point on just doesn't have a Stonehenge. He figures out, well, the H1 just flat out told him grab his forelock. So he's like, okay, I'll grab his forelock, which does indeed do a lot of good. I don't think I would like it if I had a giant forelock and somebody grabbed it. It's a little bit unclear. It looks like on the bottom of page 5 that Zom destroys Doctor Strange's cloak. It's a little unclear from the coloring whether it's actually torn or not, but that would be a big deal if it was. Yeah, it looks like it is on the next couple of pages. All of the practitioners of the mystic arts who dwell upon the earth feel the growing aura of evil. We have a nice little montage of all their heads. And he seemingly deals with Zom. So then somehow what they're doing upsets a character we've never met before called the Living Tribunal, who is coming. Zom is like, I'm going to nope out of here. I don't want to face him. And then Doctor Strange is there, and suddenly the Living Tribunal appears. Really great. I had misremembered that Ditko invented the Living Tribunal. And indeed, that is a great compliment, because this really looks like a sort of Ditko type character. This looks like a character Ditko would create. Certainly from now on, whenever the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe gather, whether it's to confront Thanos or to confront various other people, the Living Tribunal always shows up, and he fits in just fine with Eternity and all of these other Starlin and Ditko characters. And this is a really gorgeous design. And next issue, we are going to pick up with the Living Tribunal. This is an amazing issue. This is really good. I love the way the 7 lines loop and swirl around every page. Oh, yeah. It is really gorgeous. What did you think of this issue?
I really, really liked it. Yeah, if you'd asked me who designed the Living Tribunal, I probably would have been like, well, I would have said Steve Ditko or Jim Starlin. But since we're past the Steve Ditko issues and we never saw him, clearly it's Jim Starlin. But no, it's Marie Severin. And it looks different than most Marie Severin stuff. It looks like she was trying to draw a character that was not of the same universe that she was drawing everything else. It looks sort of angular and simplified, and it looks almost like she was trying to make something that looked different from everything else she had drawn in here with this otherworldly thing. The only other thing I had to say, you were talking Herb Trimpe. We often talk about the Marvel Comics fans 1961 to 1986 group. Herb Trimpe's daughter is somewhat active in that group. She shows up there a fair amount. So she is very much still around, even though her father is not, and sort of protecting his legacy in many ways in discussions. So, but yeah, I really feel that Marie Severin is bringing some body horror into this thing here.
Yeah.
The panel where the Ancient One is being fused into Stonehenge, the first of the panels where that's happening, really looks real and terrifying. His fingers are sort of sticking into the stone and starting to spread out as they hit the stone. You see his cloaks kind of being sucked in, and then that distorted look of Doctor Strange that you were talking about. And actually, come to think of it, the way he looks in that panel also reminds me of the things that looked otherworldly about the Living Tribunal. It looks like he in this part is almost in the same universe as the Living Tribunal seems to be in. But the 7 bands of Cyttorak certainly are a really interesting take that I never would have thought of. But as soon as I see him, I'm like, okay, I'm on board. Sure, let's do this.
Yeah, there's a little bit of feeling here of like he was fighting, I don't even remember his name, the Everett villain he was fighting, and then it's like, oh, but now I must leave because now Umar is coming and she is more evil than me. And then Umar is like, I must leave because Zom is coming and Zom's more evil than me. And now Zom is like, I must leave because the Living Tribunal is coming and he's more powerful than me. And I'm like, okay, this is sort of one damn thing after another. Like, this is the way they all are overlapping with each other. I mean, is this all just been one day for Doctor Strange? Like, is Doctor Strange still in the middle of sipping the tea that he was supposed to be sipping 10 issues ago?
It seems kind of like the old lady who swallowed the fly.
yes. I don't know why she swallowed a fly. So then, but I really like Trimpe's thinking, and I'm glad to have the Ancient One sort of gone. I don't remember if he's gone for good. I don't think he is, but I think within 10 issues he'll be gone for good, and I'm ready to be done with him. But anyway,
he was around in the 80s, wasn't he?
Oh no, he was long gone. He doesn't make it past Strange Tales. No. All right. Ancient One was dead and gone for good in the 80s. No sign of him in the 80s.
Okay, well, I'm sure that people are right now being like, how could he be saying something like that? That's not true. But who knows? Maybe it is.
I have read every Doctor Strange comic from the 80s, and the Ancient One is dead in every single one of them. I can say this definitively.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to Tales of Suspense featuring Captain America and Iron Man. The cover is a Captain America cover. However, we are going to start with an Iron Man story, as we usually do. The Golden Ghost, a monumental masterwork magnificently molded by Smilin' Stan Lee and Genial Gene Colan, inked by fearless Frank Giacoia, lettered by artful Artie Simek. So Artie Simek actually getting some respect this time. Hey, that's great.
Yes.
So the Melter has Tony Stark hostage right now, trying to force him to rebuild the Melter gun. Although he already has a Melter gun, I guess he's wanting Tony Stark to make it smaller, but Tony Stark ends up just being like, hey, here's your Melter gun. And he's like, but I wanted this thing smaller. What are you doing? And I love... Well, it's certainly some unique safety glasses that Stark is wearing in this whole process. How to describe these? If you remember the Mimics goggles that he had, those sort of X-shaped, oversized goggles, take those and stretch them out way past the head. You've got this visor that Stark is wearing. Meanwhile, in the background, for reasons that will become obvious later, but at the moment, for no reason that seems to be evident, you can see Tony Stark's old golden armor just sort of standing in the background as, oh yeah, we just keep that thing back there. You haven't noticed that? All these issues? Yeah, it just sits there. So the melter at one point demonstrates that his melter gun can, melt the old Iron Man armor. He just goes in and gets the shoulder a little bit. Then he's going ahead and melting a bunch of other stuff, at which point Tony Stark is like, okay, I'm done. Here's the gun. Melter's like, dude, that's still big. What are you doing? I clearly have a functional one of these. that was the whole point. But he has Tony test it first, so that if in case he's booby trapped it, then it will backfire on Tony. Well, as it's later going to turn out, Tony did booby trap it, but it's essentially a delayed booby trap. Or actually, he hadn't yet. He's about to. So after he did the test shot, he goes and he tries to add a little booby trap to it, which apparently succeeds, but Melter doesn't realize this. So Melter at this point is like, well, you've outlived your usefulness, but maybe you haven't. Maybe I want to keep you around and make you make a smaller one for me like I had intended. Maybe I won't, but right now I'm going to make you dance. So it's like an old Western where the bad guy is shooting at the ground and making the other people jump to not get their feet blasted off. So meanwhile, the cops show up, as well as all of the women that Tony has been dating, because there's clearly something bad going on in the Stark Industries. So the cops are showing up and they're like, yes, he's captured my boyfriend. Another one says, your boyfriend? Tony had a date with me tonight. And then there's a third woman back there. It's like, anything happens to him, I'll die. So that's a fun little detail. Then the Melter is like, oh, by the way, I've modified my gun so it can do not just metal, but I've got a little switch here that I can switch it from metal to wood to flesh to stone. And so he turns it to flesh and shoots Tony. Tony pretends he's dead, but then it turns out that he's just playing dead.
Because he sabotaged the gun.
Yes, presumably it's because he had sabotaged the gun. You would think that the Melter would have made him test more than one setting on the thing, but he didn't. So the Melter comes out and he's attacking the cops. We see more shots of the various women who all think that they're Tony's girlfriend in the background. So the cops charge in as the Melter runs away for some reason. I'm not quite sure why he thinks he needs to, but then we just see this shadowy thing, and we hear clang, snap, thud, thump, thump, as we see the big heavy boots of the original Iron Man armor. And we see that Tony Stark has gotten into it, but has a slightly melted shoulder still. So I'm glad they kept that through from what we saw earlier. He then flies out to fight the Melter. He's like, oh, I'd forgotten how heavy this armor was. That's the whole reason I had updated the armor, was to make it lighter and more maneuverable. But he's still able to make it through until the gun overloads and overheats in the Melter's hand, and he can't hold the thing anymore. So this was, I guess, the other booby trap he had put in it, was that it was going to overheat. So then at the end, the cops get him. Iron Man walks off, and the cop says, wait, where is Mr. Stark? And what about the other Iron Man? It's like, you can't figure out this is just Iron Man in a different suit?
Like, does the world think that every time Iron Man has switched armors, those were different Iron Men? It's like they haven't. I don't know.
Well, this cop does, apparently.
To be fair, this is the dumbest cop on the force. Like everybody is constantly pinning notes to his back saying "kick me." He's a really pitiful guy.
So, anything you have to say about this before we go on and talk about Captain America?
I just love Giacoi's thinking on this whole issue. At the end of my notes, I say competently plotted, scripted, and drawn, excellently inked. Okay, issue. Good to see old armor. So that was my wrap up. But yes, let's move on to Captain America.
So, and men shall call him traitor. Surely the most unnecessary words ever penned are continued from last ish. At the bottom, the credits say written in the fiery flash of inspiration by Smilin' Stan Lee, penciled in the first blush of enthusiasm by garrulous Gil Kane, inked in the dazzling glow of jubilation by jovial Joe Sinnott. Sort of failed on the alliteration in that one. Very forced alliteration, if anything. And then lettered in the lonely grip of lethargy by adorable Artie Simek. In the previous issue, Captain America had just been dropped down into a little pit by the Red Skull, and he is trying to get his way out. I think the walls are closing in and there are lasers up top, but then the Red Skull is, of course, like, well, I'm a man of culture, and so now farewell. A man of my sensibilities abhors the sight of bloodshed. So, of course, then he walks off, and Captain America is now able to get himself out by throwing his shield at a control panel and then hoisting himself up with some of the cables that fell out of the control panel.
We've seen other issues where Red Skull loves watching violence. Like, this makes no sense. Like, Red Skull is the Red Skull.
We have also seen other episodes where he has said that he abhors watching violence. In his first reappearance after World War II, when he had those two lackeys that had also stuck with him all through their suspended animation or whatnot, one of his lackeys just was not quite bowing and scraping enough, and so Red Skull had him killed, and he walked out of the room before the guy died by whatever sort of thing that whatever poisoning or whatever that Red Skull had done to him. So this is not the first time we've seen him act this way. I think it's basically the sort of thing that, the Nazis considered themselves the height of human culture. And so they are supposed to be refined and, civilized, and everyone else is a brute, even while they are the most brutish of all.
Okay. So it is character consistency. I'd forgotten that, but yeah, now that you say it, I remember. Yeah. So this is, they do get points for consistency.
Yes, and I mean, he doesn't do that all the time, but I think that sometimes this is maybe almost an affectation that he has. Anyway, Captain America, it's too late to catch him, except he thinks, okay, I'll take the same cable that I just used to hoist myself out of the pit. I will tie it to one of the handles that lets me hold my shield and throw my shield up and hook it on something that is on the Red Skull's ship. And then he's going and being pulled through the air, swinging around on this cable, which looks really harrowing.
Yes.
And then the Red Skull recognizes what's going on and goes ahead and comes down near the water, which he's over at this point, and is dragging Captain America under the water. However, he finally pulls himself up out of the water, climbing up the cable, retrieves his shield. At this point, he assumes that the Red Skull assumes that he is dead. Oh, there's a really nice panel on the bottom of page 5 where, still with the cable attached to his shield, he's swinging around almost like Thor's hammer in order to hoist it through a window that he breaks and hoist himself into the ship. So at this point, the Red Skull has gotten to Manhattan and uses his big plastic bubble machine to lift up what looks like Midtown, I guess there. That's the Empire State Building. But not all of Manhattan, just parts of it. Don't worry. Nothing bad happened at the junction point there where the plastic bubble sliced everything. It'll all be fine. We just put it back.
It's not like New York has a lot of people in it.
Yeah, or anything underground that might be hurtling through the ground in a tube that might then come out into a giant hole. None of that. None of that. So Red Skull then apparently has another little pit that he opens up that Captain America falls through. It's like, okay, this is the second time in 2 issues that we've done this one. And there's, of course, a robot.
It reminds me of the old Senate Live skit about trapdoors. Do you remember this, where people were going to confront a businessman and he presses a little button and opens up a trapdoor under the people who are confronting him, but then they keep malfunctioning and he keeps getting bad trapdoors and he has to buy a better trapdoor from a better trapdoor company? No, you're not remembering any of this?
Vaguely. Anyway, so we have another sort of generic battle with a sort of bug-like robot. So at least the robot's kind of unique, but it's quick. They get it out of the way, so it's not like several pages of battle. Captain America is able to get back once again into the cockpit where the Red Skull is able to fight him, but then Red Skull says, okay, I've got the middle of Manhattan up here in the sky. I can go ahead and destroy it forever. The only way that I will not do that is if you swear to serve me and my cause going forward. And so
not going forward. Not going forward.
No.
Swear to serve me and my cause for 24 hours. For precisely 24 hours. And like, I'm going to get as much evil as I can possibly get out of you in 24 hours. And then you're fine. And then I'm going to return you back to your own recognizance. And it's like, this is the, like, I'm like, all right, you clearly you have Captain America in your power so much that he will do anything you ask of him. Like, he wouldn't agree to serve you for 24 hours if you didn't have total power over him. So why not ask for more? This is, well, brings us back to Amanda Palmer. This brings us to, this thing of ask more. Like, dude, Red Skull, ask more. You need to go ahead and just ask for unlimited from now on servitude, given that you have total complete power over this guy. Why just 24 hours? It is, like, you are undervaluing yourself, Red Skull, if you need to ask for more.
When you say bringing us back to Amanda Palmer, is that Neil Gaiman's ex-wife?
Yes. Neil Gaiman's ex-wife, Amanda Palmer, wrote a book called Ask More, about how you should ask for more from people.
Which I guess reads a little differently at this point. Red Skull then goes ahead and initiates a worldwide TV broadcast where he makes Captain America say, "I serve only the Red Skull." And of course, everyone all over the world is like, "Oh my God, he's turned traitor." It's like, how many times has this happened that, everyone's just like, "Oh, well, there's just one little bit of evidence that this is going on, so there can't be anything more complex going on here. This hero has just suddenly gone bad." Anyway, we will see what happens next issue in 2 episodes. Next, The Last Defeat.
You would think it would get to the point where, like, it's been 23 hours and 30 minutes, and Red Skull's like, okay, here's the next thing. Here's the next evil thing I want you to do. And Captain America's like, look, I'm going to do it, but I have to get it done in half an hour, because after the end of half an hour, I'm not serving anymore. So you can ask, but I'm going to go ahead and limit my commitment here to things I can accomplish in the next half hour.
Well, and there was one more thing that I had to say during the hand-to-hand fight between Captain America and the Red Skull. At one point, the Red Skull says, "I must destroy you with my own hands." Okay, this is like, what, the 3rd time we've heard that this episode? But then he says, "No living man is my equal at karate." It's like, okay, take that up with the Mandarin, because...
Yeah.
Apparently, the 2 greatest masters of karate are a Chinese man and a German Nazi. All right. Okay, I'm done. I got nothing else to say about this one.
Yeah, I just had a couple other things to say. The Synod inking Kane is really fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Kane is a very sort of sharp lines kind of guy. Looks more like magazine illustration than he does like comics. And when he inks himself, it's very, very sharp and craggy and crisp. And here you have Synod, a much more supple, fluid inker, inking him. And the combination works, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I like it as much as I like. I definitely don't like it as much as I like Synod inking Kirby. I don't think I like it as much as Kane inking himself, but I think it still works. I think Synod is giving, certainly more roundedness and a little bit more weight and gravity to Kane's drawings, and I like it a lot. I like the art in this issue. I did think it was a shame to waste a couple of pages on finding another robot. I'm like, oh my God, the last thing I ever need to see is Captain America fighting another robot. Let's go ahead and keep it moving here. But other than that, I thought this was a pretty great issue. And of course, it being so silly that he only asked for 24 hours when he could clearly ask for more. Other than that, pretty great issue.
Yeah. I had noticed that in a lot of cases, Sinnott and Gil Kane complement each other very well. There are some cases where it's like, I don't know, but for the most part, I think that they enhance each other. But one thing I noticed when you bring that up, on page 6, panel 3, have we ever seen Sinnott use Zipatone before? I don't think we have. And he uses it as the shadow for the Red Skull's vehicle that's coming over Manhattan, which is odd. I'm not used to seeing Sinnott doing that. It almost seems like he's just sort of experimenting after seeing some other inkers out there using that stuff. Anyway, overall, I'll take it. It's a good issue.
Yep, it's good. Okay, let's go ahead and jump in with the final book of the month. Oh my God, Steve, it is here. I have been talking about this for the last 70 or so episodes of this podcast. We finally have Don Heck gone, at least temporarily, from the Avengers, and we have a new penciler, John Buscema. We had John Buscema just show up a little bit. He did 3 issues of Hulk. He did 1 issue of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then he disappeared again. Well, now he is back. He is here penciling the Avengers, which he will pencil off and on for the next 20 years, and it looks gorgeous. We start with the cover. featuring Diablo and the ever-delightful Dragon Man, Let Sleeping Dragons Lie. We have, I think, a really gorgeous cover. We've got, interestingly, Diablo wearing a much more muted outfit, an all-green tunic outfit, standing astride the creature he originally brought to life, Dragon Man, who is so big he can carry Goliath, and the rest of the Avengers are down below. It is really gorgeous. So this is fascinating. So whenever you read a Marvel comic and the penciler changes, you're always like, well, who should we credit for plotting in Marvel comics? Should we credit the credited writer or should we credit the penciler? Based on what we know of the Marvel method. And one way to sort of judge this, one way to do some sort of scientific data collecting on this is to say, like, well, when the penciler changes, does it feel like the writer has changed? And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Interestingly, in this case, even though these books are seemingly being done by Marvel Method, which is sort of indicated by the writer and the penciler being credited together without saying that one's the writer and one's penciler, Stan Lee majestically moguls over a Roy Thomas John Buscema masterpiece of matchless Marvel magnificence, inked with Dragon Power by George Bell. Unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of Bell's inking. Lettered with Dragon Feet by Artie Simek.
Draggin apostrophe. So nice little pun.
Yes, I had not caught that. So then we have a fairly typical issue of the Avengers, not that different from the Heck issues. We begin, as has happened way too often, with everybody getting in a big fight. They're all in their gym. Hercules is juggling a huge barbell, and they're all doing their various things. But then Hawkeye accidentally trips up Hercules, so he gets hit in the head with his own barbell. Hercules then grabs Hawkeye's bow, snaps it in two, and then creates a new bow out of metal, which he's very badass with. And then they get in a big fight with each other. And of course, Hawkeye is really just fighting because he's upset about Black Widow turning traitor. This gives us an excuse to jump to, where is this supposed to be? Is this supposed to be?
I think it's probably China. I mean, they basically just a certain far eastern power which shall remain nameless and unrecognized.
Yes. So then Black Widow lands in a little plane, starts zapping people. Then they're like, what's she doing? She's like, oh, I'm really just here to work for you. Remember, I turned bad. I'm working for you now. And then they show her their amazing device called a Psychotron. I've never been the biggest fan. I realize I'm doing nothing but complain about John Buscema at this point, but I've never been the biggest fan of John Buscema's technology. So we've got some interesting Buscema tech on page 6, where we see this giant Psychotron.
I've got to agree with you. I do not consider it very interesting. That's kind of a disappointing, not full splash, but 2/3 page panel there. I would like to see something a lot more impressive for the Psychotron weapon.
Yeah, Kirby or Stranko or even Dan Atkins probably would have done something more impressive. So then they're like, oh, by the way, you should check out in this room. We've got the shows what the Psychotron can do. Why don't you just, boom, shoves her into the room. And she's like, why are you doing this? They're like, we know you didn't really betray the West, and now we're going to subject you to the Psychotron, which causes all sorts of hallucinations to fly around her. So again, we still have a little more psychedelia here. Meanwhile, cut back to the United States. Hank has gone ahead and said, hey, you guys should mail me the Dragon Man. You guys should ship it to me in a big crate. And because I think I can do some stuff with him.
So I have 2 things to say about this page, if that's okay. One, yes. So I know probably how you're going to answer this question, but is Giant Man's identity supposed to be public to the world? I know it's known to the Avengers. I think it was issue 29 or something like that, where he says, oh, by the way, I've got to tell you that I'm Hank Pym, am Giant Man, because that's the only way I can get you to help me rescue Jan. And then later he's like, oh yeah, Jan, I just revealed our identities. I hope that's cool. But I don't know whether it's publicly known. Now, we do know that Giant Man's fan club used to show up at Hank Pym's lab all the time. So there's that too. But at this point, they seem to be acting as though, yeah, we're all just acknowledging that this is a public identity at this point with this delivery being made. The other thing I want to point out is on panel 4 on this page, look at Jan's face. I'm trying to figure out what artist this looks like. Her eyes look a lot different than I have seen any penciler or inker ink a woman's eyes so far in Marvel history. And I'm trying to figure out, is it Tim Sale that's reminding me of? I don't think so.
Huh.
I think there's someone else in particular, because Tim Sale, his mascara on women is just a huge clump of black. And this isn't quite that. This is something else. But I don't know, something about those eyes just really jump out at me as in like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
Who is doing that? Maybe some assistant that who knows? Anyway, go on.
They recall the history of Dragon Man, and he says, "Don't worry, Diablo will never control Dragon Man again." What turns out standing right across the street is Diablo, who then controls Dragon Man again. Poor Hank just causes more trouble than he solves in issue after issue, and this is another case. He has just brought Dragon Man back into Diablo's clutches. Diablo then suddenly remembers, oh, right, I'm supposed to be an alchemy-themed villain, so I will go and cause a distraction by turning the building across the street into gold. We see Bill Foster again, which is good. Diablo bursts in and goes ahead, defeats Bill Foster, and is trying to take back control of Dragon Man, zaps the Wasp, who unfortunately is not very useful. Dragon Man and Goliath punch each other for several pages and grapple. Then at one point, Giant Man's like, I'm sorry, I'm calling him Giant Man. He's supposed to be Goliath. I think Goliath and Dragon Man are fighting it, and then Goliath is like, oh, right, Jan's on the floor here somewhere. We should avoid squashing her. So let me try to move the fight a little bit here. So then, meanwhile, the other Avengers finally show up to help, but they can't. And so then Diablo tells Dragon Man to pick up Goliath and fly away, and the other three Avengers, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and Hawkeye, are left in the rubble, and they're like, as long as Diablo controls the power of Dragon Man, how can anybody hope to stop him? Next issue, the plan and the power. I have not been talking about how much I love Buscema in this issue, but I really love his art. It is, after 32 issues of Heck, this is just gorgeous art. So I feel like I keep using the word supple this week, which makes me seem like makes it seem like I'm some sort of my head's in the wrong spot. But it's just supple work. It looks like, I always complained with Heck that it looks like their feet aren't on the ground. Here, their feet are firmly on the ground. These are suddenly real three-dimensional characters with weight and shadow and depth and light. The grappling between Goliath and Dragon Man is just fantastic. You really feel these blows just smashing all around the place. It is just gorgeous. I love the art in this issue. I am so happy that we are going to have John Buscema off and on for this book for 20 years. What did you think of this issue?
Yeah, I liked it. It's interesting once again to have different teams' villains start making it into other teams' books. It's not like we've never had that before, but we seem to be having that a little bit more again here. So the Avengers fighting two of Fantastic Four's villains. About John Buscema, he was always one of my favorites when I was growing up. When we were in the 80s and he would work on stuff, and his work on the Avengers was fantastic. I always liked, as you say, his sense of volume and weight and solidity. Everything feels like it is actually interacting with gravity, but it still has the same or nearly the same power and dynamism of Kirby. Even though Kirby's stuff is often a little bit more like, hey, I'm just giving you all the power and dynamism and perspective and sort of real worldness be damned, right?
Yeah.
But John Buscema kind of has all of that. And, once again, growing up, I think we've talked about how Kirby in the 80s, we were not big fans at the time. I think I can safely say. And John Buscema just sort of seemed to have everything that the old timers said that Kirby had, plus all of this reality to it. That's just fantastic. So a couple of other things I want to point out. Scarlet Witch, page 2, final panel at the bottom. Could you describe Scarlet Witch's head? What is going on that we have not seen before?
Oh, you're saying that her headpiece is a headpiece now and doesn't wrap around her neck anymore?
Right. It's turned into sort of something more like a tiara now, which is the sort of look that she's mostly going to have from this point on, as opposed to that weird head wrap thing that she's had the entire time that Don Heck has been drawing this, which is wonderful. I am so happy to see that change on here.
Yes.
Let's see. In terms of, George Bell's or George Roussos' inking, not necessarily doing any favors here, one of the things I seem to remember when Dragon Man first appeared in Fantastic Four, we were talking about how fantastic the scales looked and how beautiful those scales were. That's where we first talked about his use of scales that we then referenced when we were last talking about Triton, when he also had beautiful scales in the previous Fantastic Four issue. Yeah, his scales are not doing anything for me in this. George Bell is not giving good scale on Dragon Man here.
They could be worse. I mean, it's not terrible scales. You know, I if I wasn't comparing it to Synod, I don't think I'd complain.
Yeah, it's probably true. So I am very happy to have John Buscema here. He will only get better and better, and I am looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, eventually he'll get a much better inker in the form of Tom Palmer, and will bring us much closer to the stratosphere. But it is fascinating the degree to which the book has not changed. That, you know, clearly Roy Thomas is still doing a lot of the writing here, because this has a similar plot to the Heck issues. You just never know when reading a Marvel comic. Should we credit, you know, if you're reading a Roy Thomas Don Heck issue, should you credit Heck or Thomas with the plot? Well, clearly it was Thomas, because this feels like a very similarly plotted issue, but it's just better. It's just better. It just doesn't have Heck's penciling ruining everything. Even though we have George Russos as an inker who I don't love, I just love having Buscema on this issue. And yes, I shall point out that, so at this point, Roy Thomas and John Buscema fall in love with each other, and they do a tremendous number of Avengers comics together, but they do even more Conan comics together, with Roy Thomas writing and John Buscema doing penciling. And I should point out that Conan has no technology in it. That Conan is an entirely pre-technological book. And so it is the ultimate. I would say that Buscema achieves his apotheosis as penciler on Conan, not on Avengers, because he doesn't have to do any technology on Conan, but which is not his strong suit. Anyway, that is it for this issue. That wraps up June of 1967. I think a pretty amazing month for Marvel Comics. I think, especially with now Avengers going back in the win column, I think that Marvel Comics is just doing absolutely amazing, fantastic work with this month, more than any month we've had in a long time, any month we've had in the last 32 months. What would you say?
Well, you know, it could be, you could say that it still averages out to the same level because of Daredevil. But overall, yes, I concur. And yeah, it is going to be nice that we aren't going to be ending on a down note now on every other episode when we finish with Avengers. Yeah, I look forward to a great period of Marvel Comics here.
Yes, it is absolutely wonderful. I'm a happy man. Okay, Steve, let's go ahead and wrap up there. We will see everybody for our next episode, when we'll have a special guest.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. And yeah, thanks everybody out there for listening. Take care and stay safe out there.
Okay, bye everybody.
Thanks for listening to Marvel Reread Club. Please subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Your reviews and ratings are a great help and always appreciated. We love hearing from you. Go to MarvelRereadClub.com to find notes and join the discussion about this episode. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. See you next time.